Soviet and Czechoslovakian parapsychology research. The declassification of a 1975 document titled Soviet and Czechoslovakian Parapsychology Research reveals the findings of the Defense Intelligence Agency on Soviet tests intended to study the emotional and telepathic bond between a mother and her newborn infant, originating from the theory that mothers could sense the death of their offspring even without witnessing it. Due to ethical concerns, testing of this theory was conducted using rabbits rather than human subjects. The experiment and its results are detailed in the official report, which states, quote, Soviet scientists placed the baby rabbits aboard the submarine. They kept the mother rabbit in a laboratory on shore, where they implanted electrodes in her brain. When the submarine was submerged, assistants recorded the rabbits one by one. If the baby passed away while on the submarine, the mother rabbit's brain reportedly produced detectable and recordable reactions. The Soviets maintained these protocols and results as highly classified, but they were uncovered by American intelligence in the 1970s. The report mentions the Pavlov Institute in Moscow had been suspected of continuing animal telepathy experiments up to the time of the report's writing. The USSR intended to use the discoveries as part of submarine emergency communications. While the exact protocol is not laid out as to how the military would react in case a submarine's mother rabbit exhibited signs of the loss and no other contact could be made with it, it's theorized in the report that the signals captured from the rabbits could serve as an alert to potentially prepare bombers or some other sort of potential retaliatory force. Alternatively, should the submarine witness an act or attack that merited a nuclear strike, the crew could signal using the baby rabbit and then surface to send a detailed message on what action to take. The specifics are not laid out. It's believed that the tests were conducted in 1956 and, while creepy, may hint to larger, unexplored truths about non-physical connections between living beings. The Drunk Nixon Files. Nuking North Korea. President Richard Nixon changed the way communist nations interacted with the United States. He came in with strong anti-communist positions and used the triangular diplomacy strategy, pitting the two communist superpowers, China and the USSR, against each other. He aspired to be remembered for his foreign policy, but struggled with frustrations regarding the Vietnam War, which he had promised to swiftly end, and with relations between the US and all of its adversaries. Added to that, he faced enemies within his own country, as he grew to see the Democratic Party as an enemy rather than a rival party. It's been claimed that Nixon grew increasingly agitated, developed a drinking problem, and became progressively paranoid of his foes, real or imagined. Thousands of classified documents from his administration were released to the public between 2007 and 2014. Thanks to those documents, it's now known that the United States was on the brink of nuclear war with North Korea in April of 1969, just a few months after Nixon took the presidency, with plans and orders drawn after North Korea attacked and took down an EC-121 spy plane on the Sea of Japan. The declassified documents kept by the National Security Archive revealed that Operation Freedom Drop sought to attack using both conventional bombs and nuclear bombs that would have covered 20 times the terrain that the one dropped in Hiroshima did. One memo from June of 1969 states that there were pre-coordinated planned options to strike 12 key locations, command centers, naval bases, and airfields using tactical nukes. President Nixon reportedly went to bed drunk and suffered from insomnia throughout the crisis. He was supposedly absent from meetings in the Situation Room, where Henry Kissinger took over to lead Nixon's cabinet members in the absence of the intoxicated president. The decision was made at one point to enact preparations for a strike, with the 82nd Airborne Division setting up its nuclear bombers as if for war. Pilots were put on high alert and awaited the final order to bomb North Korea and possibly jumpstart World War III. Fortunately, hours later they were told to stand down. Both Kissinger and a sobered-up Nixon decided to back away from a full military escalation. Soviet September 1933 Special Commission, the Memorial Report. The Soviet Nazino affair remained undisclosed until Memorial, a history and civil rights NGO, released an investigation in 1988, including the declassified reports of a 1933 Special Commission from the Communist Party of Western Siberia. According to Memorial's findings, the head of the Joint State Political Directorate of the Soviet Union, Genrikh Yagoda, and the leader of the Gulag system, Matvei Berman, proposed an incarcerated resettlement plan to Stalin in February of 1933, which would oversee the resettlement of 2 million people to an isolated river island. A reduced plan for 1 million prospective deportees was approved by the Soviet Council for People's Commissars of the USSR in March. The 6,000 chosen deportees were evenly split in half between people deemed déclassés and criminals. The déclassé people were those who were not granted passports during the passportization of the Soviet Union due to their personal histories, which precluded them from neatly fitting into the communist structure. Some were previously traders or peasants who had run away from the countryside due to lack of resources. The other half were petty criminals, or people deemed dangerous taken from prisons in an attempt to decongest them. Between March and July, 85,937 people were arrested in Moscow for lack of a passport. The arrestees were usually deported to a transit camp in Tomsk within 2 days of their arrest. The people selected for the island were then sent about 500 miles to the north, to Nazino Island, by means of river barges originally meant to transport wood. The island only had a tiny population of Ostyak natives before it was turned into a prison settlement. The deporting authorities did not coordinate sending the prisoners with sufficient resources or supplies. The deportees were sent below deck on the barges and were only fed 200 grams of bread per person each day. While 4 kilograms of flour were given to each person, no additional food or even utensils were handed out. Even the newly recruited guards traveled with no provided uniforms or shoes. Just as the 6,000 deportees landed on the island, the plan was rejected by Stalin, without an immediate plan to take them back into civilized Siberia. At the island, society fell apart before it was truly formed. The population of prisoners was composed mostly of people from cities with little to no knowledge of agriculture. This was paired with a lack of access to necessary tools to develop the land on the island and a less than hospitable climate. With almost no resources, gangs were formed to fight over food and whatever little possessions the prisoners had, mostly gold tooth fillings and crowns. The guards made things even worse by carrying out extortions and reprisals for petty criminality without ever reining in the gangs. People who attempted to escape were never heard of again. The doctors sent to monitor the island feared for their safety despite the presence of guards. It's believed that most prisoners on the island were eventually dehumanized and turned on each other. The island project was dissolved at the beginning of June. Only the 2,856 people left were transferred to smaller penal colonies, while 157 ill people were left behind. The Nazino Affair, or Nazinskaya Tragedia in Russian, as it became known, lasted only 13 weeks. Weather Modification, Project Popeye. The release of the report Rainmaking in SE Asia revealed the general protocols and existence of a top-secret weather modification program known as Operation Popeye between 1967 and 1972. The operation consisted of cloud seeding, a method to increase rainfall over the Ho Chi Minh Trail as an effort to lengthen the monsoon season and affect Vietnam during the war by overflowing rivers, ruining roads, and complicating the movement of North Vietnamese forces. The project was kept a secret from the international community to prevent any attempts to interfere or halt the program. Allegedly, the program had the backing of Secretary of State Henry Kissinger and the CIA, while Congress was kept in the dark about the proceedings. The scientific method of cloud seeding was discovered in 1946 by Vincent Schaefer while working for General Electric. To generate rainfall, aircraft released lead iodide and silver iodide over Cambodia, Laos, and Vietnam, departed from Thailand. Modernization of the original discovery was carried out at the Naval Air Weapons Station China Lake in California, with tests taking place over Okinawa, Guam, the Philippines, and even the American states of Texas and Florida. The results of the experiments remain classified. It's now known that $3.6 million was spent each year on weather control in Vietnam, which would roughly equate to 23 million modern dollars. While the success of the operation has been kept a secret, claims have been made that rainfall was increased by 30%. In the aftermath of the operation's reveal to the public, the international community, led by the U.S., assembled an Environmental Modification Convention, a treaty banning warfare technology or acts that create, quote, earthquakes, tsunamis, and upsetting the ecological balance of a region, changes in weather patterns, clouds, precipitation, cyclones of various types, and tornadic storms, changes in climate patterns, changes in ocean currents, changes in the state of the ozone layer, and changes in the state of the ionosphere. Project 1794 report. The jury is still out as to whether extraterrestrial beings have truly flown around planet Earth on disc-shaped spacecraft, but declassified documents have revealed that the United States did work on developing a flying saucer to psychologically terrorize enemies. Declassified in June of 2001, multiple reports detail the design and testing in the 1950s of a supersonic aircraft with vertical takeoff and landing capabilities. Developed by the Canadian Avro Canada Company, the flying saucer is described as a 2-foot-high, 35.3 feet in diameter vehicle weighing 20,000 pounds and carrying 5,200 pounds of fuel. The Project 1794 Final Development Summary Report describes the speed potential of the vehicle, stating, quote, propulsive jets are used to control the aircraft. The aircraft can be designed to have satisfactory handling through the whole flight range, from ground cushion takeoff to supersonic flight at very high altitude. Supersonic tests show that the calculated thrust potential with the present design will provide a much superior performance to that estimated at the start of contract negotiations, with a top speed potential between Mach 3 and Mach 4, a ceiling of over 100,000 feet, and a maximum range with allowances of about 1,000 nautical miles. Wind tunnel tests were conducted and proved that it could be maneuvered as intended with functional acceleration and rise, as well as great lift efficiency. 76 hours of test time were conducted in total at the MIT Naval Supersonic Laboratory. Recommended modifications were never completed, however, as modification designs were rejected and funding ran out early in the summer of 1961. The Avrocar programs connected to the U.S. military were canceled in December of that year. 2 fully functioning Avrocars were produced, which the U.S. military kept when it canceled the program. The Model 58-7055 was loaned in 2007 to the National Museum of the United States Air Force in Ohio, where it's been on display since 2008 after restoration. The Model 59-4975 was lent for an extended outdoor display in Canada and was then taken to the U.S. Army Transportation Museum in Virginia, where it remains under restoration. Dark 5 is bringing a new channel to light, Dark Photos. Click the new logo on screen or the link in the description below to subscribe now. Join us as we explore the unbelievable true stories behind photos that expose hidden places, strange secrets, dark histories, and incredible events caught on camera. Stay tuned as Dark 5 continues to create a new network of dark channels focused on the most popular topics from our original channel. Thank you for your support. Please click now to subscribe to Dark Photos and click the bell to get notified of our new uploads every week.